working with the organisation Collaborative Impact, which is a social innovation organisation focused on how we can support changes in education. The Collaborative Assessment Alliance is a new global network of local alliances focused on the implementation of collaborative digital assessment. And what I would like to do is start the session today just by giving you a little bit of background on the Collaborative Assessment Alliance before we move to our main speaker, Michael Davidson from OECD. So for those of you who are on this webinar, and I can see we have people from locations around the world, again, we thank you for taking the time to come and join us and to hear and talk about this important topic. With the release of the PISA 2012 results just recently, I think it's great that we can kick off the discussion about PISA 2015 and this major change that will be happening. The Collaborative Assessment Alliance, as I said, is a global network, and the mission of that network is to help education systems to provide the measures to guide teaching and learning of 21st century skills. And by that, what we mean is that there's been quite a lot of research that's been undertaken over the last few years into the area of measurement of higher order skills, collaboration and other forms. And what we're very interested in is looking at what are the issues of implementation and how we can use that research to guide improved teaching and learning. The Collaborative Assessment Alliance is, as I said, a global alliance of country, state, local organisations that have come together to really look at how we can start to build highly contextualised collaborative assessment tasks and support the implementation of those. So the building, the creation, the testing, and then the deployment, along with the issues of teacher development and how they fit into the learning environments. The real aim of what we're trying to do here is to build local capacity so that as we move away from just using knowledge and recall-based measurement into more rich measurement of these higher order skills, that we have local capacity and that we can share the learning that's happening in local education systems, schools and classrooms. The work also builds on the research that was undertaken by the ATC 21S project and other research that's happened over recent years that looks at how these skills can be measured, the tools that are required, the methodologies, and how the changes in learning environment may need to happen. And I think this work was a precursor to, or supported the move from OECD to look at how they might integrate collaborative problem solving into PISA 2015 moving ahead. I have put a web link on this slide, and we will make the slides and follow up after the call. So what I would like to do is kick off the main session today by introducing our speaker. Michael Davidson is the head of Early Childhood Education and Schools Division at OECD, a role that he has taken on over recent years, which includes being responsible for PISA at the global level. And so it's really been Michael's responsibility to manage, I guess, the recent release of the PISA 2012 results, but also looking ahead at how PISA may take on board a new form of assessment in the area of collaborative assessment. So Michael has a rich background as a statistician and working in both the UK civil service before moving to OECD, where he has been there over the last 10 years or so. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Michael. And Michael, if you want to kick off, we'd like to welcome you and thank you again for sharing your knowledge and expertise through this webinar.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Greg, and good afternoon, Paris time to everybody. I'm very grateful for the invitation by the Collaborative Assessment Alliance to present what PISA is planning to do in terms of assessing collaboration and collaborative problem solving in PISA 2015. As Greg said, I'm sure you all saw the PISA 2012 results published just a couple of weeks ago, and each round of PISA overlaps, so that in fact, even though we've just published the results from 2012, plans for 2015 are actually well advanced. So what I'll be talking to you about today is not what might happen, but actually what is happening in terms of implementation of collaborative problem solving in PISA 2015. But if I might just start with a kind of obvious question, is why measure collaboration in PISA? Each round of PISA, of course, focuses on reading, mathematics and science literacy or competencies in PISA, but each round we introduce an innovative domain of assessment, and in 2015 it's collaborative problem solving. But why do that? Well, it's a legitimate question to ask, and I guess, all these things are interlinked, but there are two core reasons why we do this. One is really in recognition by the countries that participate in PISA that the skills that you see listed there, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, are all key successes, or key skills, I should say, for successful careers. More and more in the workplace, employers are looking for people who can work effectively in teams, in social situations, perform tasks and find solutions working with others. This is well known. This is what's given the motivation to the ATC 21S work, for example, that Greg referred to. So the motivation is kind of obvious. It's key skills that increasingly employers are looking for from young people. And that also is reflected sort of in the second motivation, the curriculum development trends that we see around the world, where curriculum and assessments are increasingly being shaped around critical thinking, problem solving, those same kind of higher order skills, problem solving, self-management, collaboration. And in many ways that's manifested itself through the curriculum and project-based learning, where students are asked to work together in project situations in order to come to a product, whether it's problem solving that's involved in that, but working together in any way to achieve a team goal, such as a final report, integrated analysis, or perhaps a joint presentation. So the trend is very much towards those 21st century skills, and very much towards, within those, a focus on collaboration. So really that's the rationale for why PISA has moved in this direction. And in some respects, this is not at all alien anyway to what PISA has sought to measure from the beginning, when PISA was first introduced back in 2000. So what I've put on the screen here is the words that sort of capture PISA's concept of literacy, whether we're talking about mathematical literacy, scientific literacy, or reading literacy. The concept refers to the capacity of students to apply knowledge and skills in key subject areas, analyze, reason, communicate effectively as they pose, interpret and solve problems in a variety of situations. So that requires, in order to be effective in those literacy skills, that calls on students' ability to use higher order skills, make connections between sometimes disparate pieces of information to solve sometimes challenging problems. So those higher order skills are already embedded in any item that you see in a PISA test, whether it's reading, math, science, or now looking into problem solving. And if we look at how PISA has evolved over the years, as I said, each round a new innovative assessment has been introduced, and I won't go through the full history of that, but in PISA 2012 we had dynamic problem solving assessed through computer-based assessment. So this was individual problem solving through a computer mode. Those results, in fact, not yet published, will be published in March, April 2014. I emphasize there computer-based because actually back in PISA 2003 we did have a problem-solving paper-based assessment, which was much more limited really because of that medium of doing it through paper. But 2012 dynamic problem-solving was in a way part of a continuum of trying to reach out and assess those broader skills beyond the core skills of reading, maths and science. So 2012 in some ways was a stepping stone towards 2015, where the PISA governing board, the countries that run PISA, decided that we would go beyond looking at individual problem solving to look at collaborative problem solving in 2015. Now, in 2012 PISA, the default mode of delivery was actually through paper and pencil tests. So this problem solving in 2012 was kind of an exception where computer was used for that assessment. In 2015, this is a dynamic change, a significant change in that the default mode of delivery in PISA 2015 for all of the assessment moves to computer. And so this really opens up even more opportunities to assess skills such as collaboration on top of the regular problem solving that we've assessed in 2012. Now there's a framework for the collaborative problem solving assessment. It's all, you can read it and download it from the PISA website. I've just put on the screen here the core definition that we have arrived at with our experts of collaborative problem solving. There you see it. The competency is the capacity of an individual to effectively engage in a process whereby two or more agents attempt to solve a problem by sharing the understanding and effort required to come to a solution. So this has been developed by our expert group that we've compiled from experts all around the world. I won't go into a huge amount of detail about the framework. Here is the picture of the framework in a nutshell. Some of this might be quite difficult for you to read, so I'm not going to go through this in too much detail. But at the center of this diagram, you see the collaborative problem solving competence, the thing that we're trying to measure. It has three sort of sub-dimensions that you can read there. And these are establishing and maintaining shared understanding, taking appropriate action, establishing and maintaining team organization. So under the headline measure of collaborative problem solving, we have these three sub-scales, if you like, of collaborative problem solving. Then over to the left, you see some of the contexts and features and characteristics of problem solving tasks that will influence and be associated with those competencies. So the context in which tasks occur, whether they be personal, social, workplace, global, etc. The team composition is very important, the medium through which the task item is manifested, team composition, then the task itself, the various characteristics of a task have relationships with different dimensions of collaborative problem solving at the center. Then over to the right, you can see clearly that there is a sub division of collaborative problem solving between problem solving skills and collaboration skills. I won't read through all of these there, but these are all detailed and described at length within the framework that you can find on the website. The bits to the right of this are very important as well. Students' prior knowledge in terms of their competencies in reading, math, science, engineering, and so on, but also student characteristics, their attitudes, motivations, their dispositions towards collaboration, dispositions towards problem solving. And these dispositions, the characteristics, students' knowledge, will of course all be captured within PISA as well as the actual assessment of collaborative problem solving. So students will fill in questionnaires which will give us those characteristics. So just to illustrate what that means in practice, these are the student dispositions that will be measured through student self-reports. So again, just to emphasize, this is through the questionnaire that the students will fill in addition to the assessment itself. So those are the five, there are some others, but these are the five key scales that will be measured within the student questionnaire. So collaboration and teamwork dispositions. So the student, for example, will be asked a whole barrage of questions such as to what extent they agree or disagree, that they enjoy exchanging ideas, they take into account what others are interested in. I find that teams make better decisions than individuals, and so on. There's about 25 items that students are asked, and that will then build into a scale of a disposition towards teamwork and collaboration. Students' in-school experiences and collaboration-related activities. So here students are asked about how often they take part in team projects within the school. They share ideas with classmates, they feedback on classmates' work, cooperate with classmates on a project. So again, a whole list of questions that will allow us to build a scale of in-school experience and exposure to collaboration-related activities. Same for out-of-school experiences. Here the questions are really asking about the extent to which students perhaps engage in cooperation and collaboration through texting with their peers, interacting with peers using online social networking, and so on. Then we have those last two scales that I've listed there: openness to problem solving and perseverance. So here, in terms of openness to problem solving, the student answers a question, the extent to which they are quick to understand things, seek explanations for things, easily link facts together. And then perseverance is asking things like, I remain interested in tasks that I start, true or disagree, confronted with a problem I easily give up, and so on. In fact, these last two scales, openness to problem solving and perseverance, were scales that were included in the PISA 2012 assessment, and we are analysing those alongside problem solving, individual problem solving in PISA 2012. In fact, we already saw very strong correlations between those attributes and students' performance in mathematics in the results that have already been published. You'll see tables that show very strong correlations and associations between the levels of perseverance and mathematical competence. So we'll expect to see similar relationships with collaborative problem solving when we come to measure that in 2015. So these dispositions are very important. We need to go beyond the, if you like, the simple league table of who's better or worse at collaborative problem solving, and really try to understand what factors can influence and encourage better collaboration in schools. Just a few words of, this is an important slide, because we know from the ATC 21S work that student-to-student collaboration can be assessed and measured. That's what that project clearly showed could be achieved. So the question came to us when we were developing PISA 2015 was, could we practically replicate that in a large-scale assessment such as PISA that would put significant challenges on the sampling of students and students with schools, but also students within schools. It would put huge challenges on the technological requirements within schools across 70-odd countries in order to have the infrastructure that would allow an effective student-to-student collaboration. And after long deliberation with the experts and with the PISA governing board countries, the decision was taken that that would really be beyond the reach of 2015 to have truly students collaborating with each other. So a pragmatic decision was taken that we instead, in 2015, will take an approach that shows and measures the collaboration between student and a computer-generated agent, an avatar in other words. So the student, in all the tasks in 2015, the student will be engaged in a collaborative activity with a computer-generated agent. Now that's caused some questions and concerns among some countries, and so we need to be very clear that as we're going down this path, what it is that we are actually measuring. Can we truly call this collaborative problem solving when it's student with a computer-generated agent? So we have underway at the moment a number of validation steps that we're undertaking just to test the extent to which we can call this collaborative problem solving. I can say perhaps a little bit more about this if you're interested in during the question and answer session. But these steps are very important in order to be quite clear in our communication about what it is that we are measuring and the results that we will publish. So I just want to give you an illustration of what we're measuring in 2015. As I said earlier, we're on the track already in developing the assessment. All of the items have been developed. They will be field trialed in the 75 countries that are participating in PISA 2015. They'll be field trialed during March and May of next year. Countries have been frantically going through the process of translation of those items, building them into the online, or not the online, the computer delivery platform. That's all going on at the moment, and they'll be ready to go through the field trial in, as I said, starting in March of next year. So I can't show you live items for obvious reasons, they're confidential, but in the framework that you can see on our website, there are 2 or 3 illustrative items that were developed just to show the kind of concepts that we're talking about within PISA when we talk about collaborative problem solving. So one item here I'm showing you is an illustrative item. It has actually been cog-labbed with some students just to see what the cognitive processes that students went through, and that helped us be confident that what I'm about to show you is an item that does indeed speak to the various dimensions and constructs that are in the collaborative problem solving assessment in PISA. So I hope you can read this. This is the first screen that the student would see. Again, this is just an illustrative item. So the unit is aquarium, is the name of the item. So the first thing the student sees is that a piece of information telling them that your school has got a new aquarium to brighten up the reception area. And the task that you and your classmate Abby has is to set up the tank. You've got to work together with Abby to find the best conditions for the fish to live in the aquarium. And in this particular example, they're given 5 trials at finding what the right conditions are that will keep the fish alive. Then it's very important to make sure the student understands the way that the collaboration will work through chatting with the online or the computer-generated agent. So they are asked to click, and then you get to see how this chat box will work. There it is, appears on the left-hand side, where the conversation will appear between the student and the avatar. And so to start the conversation, the student is given 3 choices. First of all, to say, "Hi, Abby," or to say, "Glad to be working with you," or to say, "Are you ready?" just to start the conversation. This is typically how the chat operates, that the student has to choose one of those. So here in this illustration, the student chooses "Hi, Abby," and that's what appears. Then the computer responds, "Hi, are you ready?" And you can then start to explore the item itself. And here you can see the control panel that the student is first given to see on their screen. So there are 3 elements within this control panel, which are water type, scenery, and lighting. And the fish tank itself is visualized like that. Then the student is given a series of choices of how to start this collaboration. And so you see the options they're given there. They can either say, "What do we need to do? How many fish can you see?" and so on. In this illustration, the student chooses the 4th or the 5th option, which is, "I've got controls for water type, scenery, and lighting." So he's telling the computer that's what I've got. The student responds saying, "Yep, what shall we do now?" And the student then has a choice of, again, some options of how they react to that prompt from the computer. He suggests, "I'll try and work with my control panel." The computer responds that, "Well, wait, before you do that, I'll share you my control panel," because the computer also has access to some elements within the aquarium. In the computer's case, Abby, the computer-generated partner, can alter the food type, the number of fish, and the temperature between high and low. So I'm not going to go through all of these steps. I think you begin to see the idea maybe. The chat continues where the student has to choose again. What shall I do next? I'll just chop through this. The student is prompted by the computer. What should we do now? Let's change the scenery, says the student. Computer responds, "Well, okay, I'll change the food to dry." So the computer changes food from food blocks to dry, and the student has changed the scenery from plants, which you see there on the screen. They change it to a rocky environment. So it continues. They try out the conditions, and you can see that the little bar at the bottom tells you that the results have moved towards the great side of things, but I've just all of the on it goes. I won't go through all those steps until they find an adequate solution, and great, we got it right. and the task is completed. In this particular example, you can see that once the task is completed, there is still room and a good opportunity to ask the student what his impressions were or her impressions were of working with Abby. Do you think Abby understood how to reach the best conditions? And this is all part of the information that is collected in order to assess the collaboration skills of the individual. Would you work differently with Abby on similar tasks? And again, that's important information to complete the picture of collaboration for that individual student. And that's the end of the task. So I hope that gives you some idea of what a task will look like and how the computer system will interact with the student. In terms of next steps, I mentioned this validation work that we've got on the way at the moment to validate this human agent approach, because when we publish the results, we need to know, do we call it collaboration? Is it reliable to call it that or not? And if it isn't, if this validation work shows that, you know, it's not quite valid to call it that, then we'll have to think of another name. I won't try and imagine what that is. I'm reasonably confident, in fact, that those validation steps will nevertheless allow us to still call this collaboration, even though that it's not student to student. So I mentioned the field trial is going to take place next year, spring 2014, and then the main study would be implemented the year after that. Some countries go rather earlier. March, I think, is the earliest any country would go, then all the way to November 2015. And we'd be publishing the results in December 2016. And the PISA governing board and the OECD is very excited about the prospects that these results are going to, frankly, break new ground. We know this is very risky in terms of an innovative domain, but that is by its nature. And we're nevertheless confident that we're going to get valid, policy-relevant information that's going to help practitioners, policymakers to build better problem solvers, collaborative problem solvers around the world. So I think I've used up all of my time. I thank you very much for your attention, and now hand back, I think, to Greg, who will facilitate the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, and some great information there about the upcoming PISA 2015. It's great to be able to see it in a practical example of what a task might look like for the students who'll be undertaking this work. What I would like to do is I'll just hand back to Karosh, who will give us an update on how we'll manage the Q&A session, and then we'll be able to open microphones, or people will be able to type questions in the text box as well. Karosh, do you want to walk people through how we'll run the Q&A session?
Thank you so much. So now we're going to be going into the Q&A session. Thank you, Greg. If you have questions, and you can see on the slide here, please indicate so by raising your hand, and it's under the Mood tab that you'll find on top of the webinar platform. So once you go to the Mood tab, you click, raise your hand, and we will call on you based on chronology. We'll take 2 questions at a time for Michael Davidson to answer, just to create more sort of a rich environment and answering method. Please ensure that you have a functioning quality microphone when we enable your audio. So right now I'm going to be switching the meeting option to a discussion mode. And
all attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
Press *6, or sorry, rather, you can unmute yourself to answer the question. So please indicate, and we'll get to your question. Okay.
So while people are working out the mood button and indicating, and you can also type a question in the text box, I have a question for Michael. It's one that interests me. Is that Michael, maybe you might like to comment a little bit on the preparation for schools, for systems and schools, on this journey to 2015. And by that, I don't mean the technical preparation, and you highlighted how you're going through validation tests and people are working out the technology and the deployment. But from a teaching and learning point of view, what are you hearing from countries about how they're prepared or not, or concerned about preparation as we move forward towards the assessment that will happen in 2015? That's a question that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm. You want me to answer that now, Greg? Or?
Well, I see Patrick Killian from ETS also has a question, so maybe we'll throw in one from Patrick as well.
Yep.
Yeah, my question is, Michael, thanks for that presentation. Is there someday a plan to do student-to-student collaboration assessment?
Okay, Michael, let's go back and you can work on those two questions, and then other people can show that they would like to ask a question or join in the discussion. Michael.
Yep. Good, thank you. So, Greg, your question about preparation for schools or what we're hearing, this is actually always a very sensitive issue in PISA because there is a balance to be struck up between valuing the skills that PISA is measuring and saying, yeah, these are something that we embed in our classrooms and so on, and so PISA is simply an external mirror that allows us to see how well we're teaching those skills on the one hand, and that's up, if you like. What's perceived as a negative in terms of preparation is where there are claims that some countries are engaging in actually practicing for the PISA test, and where the aim is not actually so much to teach the students the skills that PISA values, but really to climb the international league table is how it's often presented. So I'm always very clear that the examples that are the ones that we would recognise and encourage are the first category, where this is not driven by PISA. PISA is there as the mirror that tells you how well your students and the system is doing in terms of developing those skills. But it's really for the classroom, the teachers and so on, to develop those skills and let PISA be the mirror on that. It shouldn't be PISA driving this. Having said that, I do realise that even as this is kind of leading edge stuff that all systems are really pushing forward with in terms of developing and measuring collaboration skills, PISA in practice probably will drive this in some countries, and we do hear that from some countries who have joined the assessment in 2015. So I think it can be a positive. I do get nervous when I hear too much talk of preparing for PISA and what are countries doing to prepare for PISA. For me, that's completely the wrong way round, and it should really be PISA, as I say, being this mirror of showing how well a country is doing to develop those skills. But again, as PISA has evolved over the years, what it's become better at, I think it's still a long way from being good at, is speaking directly to the classroom. It's good at speaking to the policymaker, not so good at speaking to the classroom. And more and more we are doing analysis at the item level to understand where student strengths and weaknesses are, and helping PISA, or using PISA to help the instruction in a formative way in schools. So I'm hopeful that, particularly through a computer medium such as you see on that item there, those items, when they will be public released, can be used by countries to use PISA type items to develop collaboration and assess collaboration skills in a formative way within schools. So I think it ways, but I do get a bit nervous about any talk of preparing for PISA. To Patrick's question, thank you. Hello Patrick, and thank you for your question. The short answer is I don't know if PISA will measure student to student in the future. There is a discussion underway at the moment about, already we're thinking about PISA 2018 because the procurement of the contractors for 2018 actually will start already in the beginning of 2014. So there's a discussion at the moment what the innovative domain should be for PISA 2018. Should we look to develop collaborative problem solving further and perhaps move to student collaboration? Or should we look at another area and let's see what we learn from PISA 2015 collaboration through a computer generated mode, learn from that first before we make the step towards student to student. And the PISA governing board, who discussed this only just recently back in October, took the decision that we need to see how successful the 2015 exercise is before we make a decision to move to student how difficult that would be, what would be the value that would be gained by doing it. They really want to see the results of 2015. So it won't, so the short answer, I've already been too long, but the answer for 2018 is collaborative problem solving will not be part of 2018, but prospectively, in light of hopefully the success of 2015, it could be featuring as a student-to-student basis in a future cycle of PISA.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, for those answers, and I'm very happy with the way you answered my question, because I guess I was loading it a little bit, and we did get concerned about the notion of systems and classrooms trying to cram, I guess, for things like PISA. Again, do people have any questions that they would like to ask of Michael while we have him here? I think it's a great opportunity. I'm intrigued with the work that you're doing. I think this will cut new ground, and I think OECD should be recognised for the risks that you're taking, but without risk we don't see any real improvement. So I think it's quite exciting. Do we have any more questions? And I'll remind people you can either ask a question by typing it in the text window, or you can ask a question by raising your hand. And I can see Arto from Finland has a question. So let's go to Arto.
Hello to everyone. I'm from Finland, University of Jyväskylä, and I have been involved with the HCC 21S project as well, and now in the future PISA 2015. And I'm just interested in this. There was this PISA 2012 result really hit big headlines in Finland because, of course, we have a slight decrease in the core curricular measures. And now I was wondering now that the problem-solving part is now published separately from the sort of core subject measures, and I'm just thinking how it might affect in the how it's welcomed and what kind of impact it might have now when it's sort of when they are published separately, and all these like innovative areas of the measures seem for the sort of wide audience seem to be separate from not as like important effect in a way, like the math and reading and science maybe are the important ones, and then we have this fourth block of measures coming a little bit beside. And how can we, I think in PISA, to lift these I think 21st century skills areas are important and more important, and like Michael really wisely said, that we are not really supposed to train for PISA, and there are many other features that PISA really has than these comparing the PISA scores between the countries. But how is there any thoughts about lifting the sort of importance, but also the what do you call it? The how these innovative areas are welcomed in this wide audience and youth and media. Thank you.
Thanks, Ardo. Good question. Michael, we'll go to that now while other people see if they have questions. Why don't you try and answer that one?
Good, thank you, Arto. Maybe just I can throw a question out before I answer Arto. I'd be interested in people's view about this validity of measuring computer student collaboration as opposed to student collaboration. So I'd be interested if anybody's got any reflections on that while I answer Arto's question. But Arto is a good question, and and you have seen and others will have seen that we published 4 volumes of amounting to something like 1,500 pages on the 3rd of December, and they were all focused on reading, maths and science. And it was for practical reasons, if nothing else, that the problem solving has to come later. There is also an optional assessment of financial literacy where the results are going to be published later. So that is really for practical reasons. But I do take your point that if we're serious about saying how important those skills are, collaboration and other 21st century skills, we perhaps need to balance these up more alongside the sort of traditional, if I can call them, reading, math and science skills. Although I do emphasize again what I said in my presentation, that even though we call it reading, math and science, to be good at those in PISA, you need to draw on critical thinking, high order thinking skills and so on. But I take your point. I think we do need to look at how we publish those results together rather than separately. And that's why I deliberately said on the slide, and I hope I'm not proved to be wrong, that I deliberately said that the collaborative problem solving results will be published in December 2016 and not, let's say, March or April 2017. But that's a decision still. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, frankly, from the publication of the results this time. It can go both ways, because there is such a clamour amongst the media for the basic league table on, in this case, mathematics. If we put out problem-solving results at the same time, there'd be a risk that they would just be ignored and swamped, and the league table thing gets all the attention. So by publishing them separately, there is a potential, we'll see if it works, that problem-solving gets more of an airing. And without sort of revealing any secrets about those results, I think we'll see some quite different patterns in country performance in problem solving compared to what we've seen in the mathematics performance, for example. It's not, they're correlated, but then so is reading and mathematics. But we will see countries who, maybe do better on the traditional subjects, but do less well on the problem solving. And that's going to be doubly interesting when we get to collaborative problem solving, because it's richer than simply problem solving. And I would anticipate we'll not only see differences between problem solving and reading, math and science performance, but difference between collaborative problem solving and individual problem solving.
Thanks. I think some very interesting comments there, and I'm intrigued. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for March and April now to see those results. Again, do we have any further questions? And I'm happy. I think you've got some good people on the call, Michael, that we could call on to give you feedback as you requested. But I can see some people there who we might want to jump on and ask for that feedback. All right. In light of that, maybe I will do some directing. Although Michael, feel free to jump in. Maybe if we asked Kathy Cumpert or Professor Wing-On from Singapore, their view around the question that Michael asked, which is the feedback on the computer agent collaboration question that he asked. Kathy or Professor Wing-On, would you feel comfortable responding to that at all? Being quiet, I think. Professor Wing-On, if you'd like to.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you now. Away you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
This is the first time I hear the presentation. I think the idea is very interesting. I understand why you are introducing computer to students instead of student to student, because media, so there would be several options for the computer to respond to student, and that could be a fair work rating, because if two students are too different, one is a good collaborator, the other is not a good collaborator. We don't know who is wrong or who is right. But I was looking at the item. I also have some questions. First, when we are talking about collaborative problem solving, I am interested to know, just from that example, what kind of collaboration you are looking at. You're looking at collaborative understanding, collaborative problem definition, and then also collaborative solution. I don't know how many options of understanding about the problem you can have. There could be different ways of understanding what means to be the best. What is the best condition? There could be many perspectives to define the best, and how two different groups of students understand what is the best condition can lead to a different way of defining the problem, and how the problems are seen differently can also lead to different ways of solutions, and there may not be right answers or wrong answers, or may not be better or worse answers, but they may be different sets of answers, sets of understanding, sets of problem identification, different sets of solutions. They are just different. May not be able to rank. So I think just for this simple question, it seems to be there can be many complicated questions behind, and I am asking this question maybe because I don't have the background. I was not involved in the design, so these questions may be asked because I'm simply ignorant about the whole thinking. But I hope this naive question may be useful for your further thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And I'm going to add in one more. We've had one from the text window, Michael, that is from Wayne Holden in Australia, that he asked the question, I'm wondering how many collaborative questions will students be asked to attempt in 2015? You know, what's the scope of the number of questions? So you've got two there if you'd like to tackle them, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Lee, for your question. I mean, I'm going to cop out a little bit and say that a lot of what you've asked is covered in the framework, but just to be a little bit more helpful in an answer right here and now. So the assessment has different dimensions, as I showed in the framework, and so it breaks down collaborative problem solving into exploring and understanding, representing and formulating, planning and executing, and monitoring and reflecting. And so each of the items will try and, in sometimes different contexts, test the extent to which those sub-competencies are present. So just to give you an example, there will be an interaction, for example, between exploring and understanding and establishing and maintaining shared understanding. So this is where the student with the computer-generated agent has to discover the different perspectives that can be taken on a problem, the different abilities of the respective team members, in order to decide what the right strategy is in order to tackle the problem. And if I've understood your question correctly, you're right, there are multi-dimensions even within that. This isn't simply about a student with somebody else successfully solving a problem. It's as much as anything, it's about the how a solution is reached, or even sometimes how a non-solution or an incomplete solution is reached. So all of the process data that will be captured through students engaging with the computer, this will all be tracked and recorded. So the score that is given to a student on any one task will be a combination of the actions they take in terms of pressing buttons, choosing options, the communications that they have with the computer through those chat windows that you see, and the products of those two things. And those products can either be a successful outcome or a partial solution. So, you know, I'm not pretending to be a psychometrician. There are much cleverer people than I who are going to take all of that process data and within the framework as defined come up with the scores along those different dimensions. So I hope I've given you some kind of answer, but I think the framework is worth looking at to see exactly how, not only the different dimensions, but it also talks about how the items will be scored in the test. And the second question, which I think came from Wayne Holden, about the number of items, this is slightly complicated, but let me say that first of all, the booklet design in PISA is that any one student gets a mixture of, in this case, collaborative problem-solving items and modules of other items. So in 2015, there'll be science as the major domain. So every student will do science. Every student will do collaborative problem-solving. They end up doing 1 or 2 clusters of items, and each cluster is worth 30 minutes. So the minimum that any one student in the test will do is 30 minutes of collaborative problem-solving items. Now those clusters are made up of units, and a unit is estimated between 5 to 23 minutes. So unit is, what I've shown you here is an example of a unit. The aquarium example is a unit. So these range from 5 to 23 minutes. So a student who's assigned, say, two 30-minute clusters would respond to approximately 6 units. I can go on beyond that and tell you that each unit is divided into 2 to 3 parts, and each part has 3 or 4 scoring points. So a student who responds to 6 units, so that's 2 clusters of 30 minutes, would be assessed on approximately 50 scoring points. I hope that wasn't too confusing. I can send this in an email to explain that maybe a bit clearer. But basically, either 30 minutes or 1 hour's worth of collaborative problem solving, depending on which booklet they get.
Well, I'm going to close out on the question and answer session. I want to thank Michael again for both his presentation and the discussion. I think there's been some really good questions come up there. Of course, I see this as the start of the journey as we move towards 2015, and I think it's actually a bigger journey, which is as we start to understand more about the measurement and assessment of these complex skills and how we can best do it, particularly with the power and the potential of the technology that we have available. So I think I say on behalf of everyone, Michael, that the session today, this afternoon in Paris, was extremely interesting. There was lots of good information in there, and I'm sure people will have more questions, which is natural, but it helps us as we start to think about how we get prepared and what happens prior to PISA 2015 and the work that you're doing on the journey. So thank you very much for taking the time to present to us and be involved in the question and answer session today.
Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you, everybody, for participating.
As a follow-up to the session, we have recorded it so you can share it with your colleagues, and we will distribute to you an email after this session with a link and with more information about collaborative assessment and future events. This has been the first Collaborative Assessment Alliance webinar and first sort of engagement with people like Michael. I will highlight that in January 2014 at the Bet Week Education World Forum in London, that we will be hosting a live open forum, and some of the speakers for that already confirmed are Dr. Michelle Bruniges, who's the Director General of Education for New South Wales and Australia, and if you know Michelle, she is a PhD in psychometrics, so she knows the business, so to speak, but also the Director General there. And we'll also have Martin Farrow, who's the CEO of Learnovate in Trinity College in Dublin, which is a government-sponsored innovation centre around learning and measurement of learning. So they're 2 of the speakers we'll have at that open forum. We'll send you some information about that if people want to attend that open forum. We think it will be a fairly interesting dialogue as we go along. I've also included some links there. My final comments are I would like to thank our founding partners, ETS, Intel, Microsoft and Promethean, who have supported the establishment of the Collaborative Assessment Alliance, and to thank you for joining this session, and hopefully you found it valuable and you will share this with other people who might also be interested in this important work. So thanks a lot for taking the time. Hopefully you'll have a good day or a good evening wherever you are, and we'll look forward to talking to you again in the future. Thank you very much.